Welcome, everyone. My name is Ross Pally, General Manager at Venture Lane. We are a hub and support system for B2B early stage technology companies in the greater Boston area. Today's topic, lead generation, the apple of everyone's eye. As promised by the title, by the time we get through with these 45 minutes, everyone's lead generation will have a 10x multiplier on it. Very exciting. And if we don't deliver on the 10x multiplier, hopefully everyone at least comes away with a few very tactical strategies that can be implemented within days to help start making an impact on feeding the top of the funnel. So to help us with this topic today, we have Eric Keating, VP of Marketing at Appcues, and Adam Goyette, VP of Marketing at Help Scout. Welcome, Adam. Welcome, Eric. Thanks for making the time today. If it's possible, maybe let's just start off with quick backstories. Adam, we can start with you. What are you doing over at Help Scout right now? I know it's new role for you, and maybe a little bit of the backstory leading up to Help Scout.
Yeah, so I've been a Help Scout since April 1st. So picked an interesting time to switch jobs. Prior to that, I was at G2, where I led all acquisition and global growth marketing. And a Help Scout, really interesting company. They have over 10,000 customers in about 140 different countries. Really customer first help desk software for small to medium sized businesses. So we have customers ranging from SaaS companies to consumer companies like King Arthur's Flowers. So just a really interesting product with a lot of different use cases. So with that, I'm trying to get my hands around like, what is the growth strategy? Who is the market we're going after? And what are some of the tactics we want to employ? So that and building out the team has kind of been the two initiatives I've really been tackling in the last 90 days.
Got it. Awesome. Eric, what's going on at Appcues and what brought you to Appcues?
Sure, yeah. So thanks for having me. Excited about this. So I head up marketing at Appcues. I've been at Appcues for about a year and a half. I joined at the beginning of 2019. Spent most of my career in SaaS, working at SaaS companies, selling into more of go-to-market functions, so sales and marketing primarily. And when I joined Appcues, the reason why I came over is because I was really interested in this, technology for product teams and product marketing teams. I just saw, there was a lot of momentum, and I saw the future looking bright for the industry. So came over to Appcues. We make it easy for you to introduce new experiences into your product experience if you're a SaaS company. So everything from new user onboarding to ongoing engagement of your users, keeping them engaged and retained over time with in-product experiences. Like we've all been doing the last 90 days or so, just really focused on making sure our go-to-market function is very efficient, and that we're getting the most out of every dollar spent, and that we're taking the appropriate actions to kind of deal with all of the uncertainty and unknowns that are still persisting today. So.
Awesome. And speaking of current climate, so a month or so ago, we had a speaker on, I think it was David Donlan, Chief Revenue Officer at Zulu. His input on kind of how the last few months have shaken out was top of funnel, a lot of sort of like the marketing activity. They weren't seeing so much of a change or a headwind at the top of the funnel. And if anything, he was in the e-commerce vertical, so they were seeing probably a bit more activity at top of funnel. And where the headwinds were kicking in was later on in the process, trying to convert leads into paying customers. That was the challenge. So Adam, we'll start with you. Top of funnel lead generation or lead acquisition. Have you been seeing much of a difference in the past few months? And at Help Scout, anything changing strategically in the last few months, high level, and then we'll get into the poll after that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of it depends on the business you're in and where you are in the market, right? So like Help Scout, for instance, we've actually had some of our best months ever in terms of like trial volume. So part of it when COVID kind of hit, we changed our trial to be a 15-day to a 90-day trial to really give people the opportunity, kind of expecting that, hey, not a lot of people are going to be willing to pay right now. So let's give them the opportunity to get into the product, get up and running. So we're just kind of starting to come out of those 90-day trials to see conversion rates and stuff like that of how that's holding up. But I think it's also interesting because Eric kind of touched on efficiency. Like depending on where you are in the market, if you're not the highest priced person out there, help desk software is not something people are usually just ripping out and getting rid of completely, right? So it's like we see a lot of people who are coming from Intercom and Zendesk and some of these, larger, higher ticket items that are looking for just a simpler, easier solution that costs a little bit less, right? And so we're seeing some of those trends being positioned kind of where we are in the market.
Got it. Awesome. Eric, any color to add there? Similar over at Appcues, seeing any differences?
Yeah, similar in that, website traffic hasn't really suffered. Our content program's always been a strength. So, pretty stable there in terms of people starting trials, fairly stable. Where we've seen more of an impact is, more of those trialers are tire kicking. They're just kind of poking around and seeing what's out there. So they're turning into sales conversations at a little bit of a lower rate. The other thing is, we made a change last year. We were very much like a specific solution for user onboarding. That's our kind of primary use case, but there's a whole lot more we can do. So last year we started pitching a bit of more of a strategic vision for the product. And that's certainly still the right thing to do. But what we've seen over the last few months is kind of a return to people looking for quick wins with software, right? They're like, oh, my world's changing. What am I going to do? I'm going to go buy this tool and see what works. So we've seen more of the transactional sale model be a little bit more prominent than it was, 6 months ago.
Makes sense. Okay. Good insights to start. Got the lay of the land. Adam and Eric, you both mentioned the free trial strategy as a way to generate leads. So let's start there. Based on the poll, not one of the more popular strategies out of the 5 that we listed, but probably one that's worth digging into a little bit. Maybe it's a little undervalued in our attendee pool right now. So Adam, we'll start with you. Your advice for an earlier stage team that is either not yet doing a free trial or freemium option and is considering, or maybe they are, and sort of maybe a tip or two ways that they can optimize for lead generation.
Yeah, I think so from a lead gen standpoint, it's a real easy carrot to go out and dangle, like free trial, sign up and test it, right? But it's really up to the product to deliver on the free trial, because if you have a free trial where it's not a great experience and you're just dumping people into it, like the outcome of that's pretty horrible. You get a bad taste in your mouth as an end user. It's so hard to walk someone back from that, to say, well, you didn't really understand what we were doing or whatever it might be. So it's really upon like your onboarding during that trial, as well as the actual product experience. Can they actually see value pretty quickly within whatever time frame you're giving them to do it? Otherwise, don't put people into a free trial, because it's actually probably worse if it's a complicated product and they get in and they're like, oh, this is not for me, right? So I think it's really incumbent upon the product being able to deliver something pretty quickly and get people engaged super quickly. Because people start free trials at all different times, right? I might have 10 minutes before a meeting. I'm on a website, they have a free trial, I jump in real quick. If I go in and it looks like super complicated and you're asking me to do 20 things, I'm probably bailing and I'm probably not coming back to it as a reality, right? But if you can get that piece nailed down, it makes it a lot easier in terms of the demand gen side to drive people into the product versus a demo, for instance.
Got it. So let's not free trial for the sake of free trial. Be as intentional as possible and understand that value needs to be delivered, and delivered rather quickly, in order for the internal value of that trial to be realized, for that trial to hopefully convert to a paying customer. Eric, any color to add on the free trial strategy?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd echo what Adam said 100%. Don't go and launch a free trial right now if your product's not ready for it. I don't know if it's the right time to make a major shift like that anyway. But I certainly, as a head of marketing at Appcues, I reap the benefits of us having a trial model all the time. It's a very low barrier to entry into the product. It's a very compelling call to action. It's what people want. Fewer people than ever want to talk to a salesperson right now to learn about a product. They just want to go and learn about it themselves. So you can give them the opportunity to go get familiar with your product, in a self-service way. That's not just for, small software companies. It is the future. I fully believe of SaaS. So, certainly agree with Adam strategically on that point. And then, I think like you're going to get a lot of low quality prospects starting trials, not good fits. And so it's really important to, if you do have a trial, you are getting free trial leads, to make sure you understand what makes a good trial lead. I actually brought up, I think I helped frame this poll question. I added this product qualified leads concept, which is the idea that you're actually using a free trialer's activity in the product, so their behavior, as well as attributes about their company, to determine who's a good fit, and then route those people to the sales team as priority leads. So putting a filter, not just routing everybody from free trials to a sales team, especially if you don't have a self-service purchasing option. You got to be deliberate about who you're sending.
Sure. Product qualified lead. Is that trademarked by?
No. I think there might be a company that has a trademark on it, but it's definitely a concept that's gaining in popularity, right? It's basically the concept of using engagement in the product to be qualification for leads for sales team.
Absolutely. So before we move on to the next strategy, maybe let's talk quickly some quick best practices around the marketing of the free trial option. So Adam, we'll start with you again. Again, early stage technology company, maybe it's a team of 5-10 people or so, probably have 1 to 2 dedicated marketing hires. 1 or 2 quick best practices for effective marketing of the free trial.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. One is like you're targeting, right? Because if you have limited resources, like Eric mentioned, you can get just a lot of noise because it's low barrier to entry. And so I think the more you can actually build in, like identifying who is your ICP and going after like that target very specifically, I think will do wonders versus just like kind of a spray and pray, like, oh, marketers, right? Like hone it in even more, go like 3 layers deep. So, like, hey, marketers at this size company who have this similar tech stack, right? You can use a lot of tools out there to go out and target those types of folks. I think like getting really like dialed in on that. And then I think the other thing is like the onboarding acquisition piece of it, right? Is like putting in like referral loops and some of the things to really leverage the people you actually have coming in. Can you make it sticky so that they have to add folks within the product, and suddenly like you're getting more and more people into it? And so I think just thinking through like what are some of those growth loops you can kind of create within the product itself, so you're not just fully I think dependent on like money in, money out in terms of like a marketing demand gen focus.
Got it. That referral tactic, that sounds like a good one. Eric, anything to add?
Yeah,
best practices.
A lot. Yeah, totally. So I got 2 points. One of them, they're both related to what Adam just said, but the first being, once you get somebody into a trial, don't count, if you're in marketing, that's not success. Okay, like there are going to be a lot of people starting a trial, and it's especially in smaller companies where you don't have a dedicated function for this, or maybe the product team's small or primarily engineers. You've got to, you can't just say, okay, I got somebody into trial, I'm good. That's what marketing's job was. There's a lot more work to be done to get them to a state where they really want to, where they have legitimate interest in your product and really are ready to start having a buying conversation.
Yeah.
And then along those lines, actually, before I move on, Adam mentioned onboarding. Certainly be conscious of what the initial experience is in your product, but make sure that if you've got retargeting programs or any kind of advertising, that you're still advertising to those folks. Maybe the content of that advertising changed. Maybe you're focused more on case studies versus top of funnel content. But continue to market to these folks. They are not yet sold. And then related to that, this might be a little controversial. I hope not. But because of the title of the webinar, lead generation, the first thing I did when I started at Appcues, or one of the first things I did was move the measure of marketing success from leads to pipeline, because I've said this 1,000 times inside the walls of Appcues, but I could generate 1,000 super low quality leads tomorrow. I could generate 10 really high quality leads, and they could end up being the same, having the same revenue impact on the business. So, if your marketing team is still, their main KPI is still lead volume, you've got to move away from that, especially now, because the quality of the lead is more important than ever.
So for everyone tuned in, Adam, go ahead.
I was gonna say, just to piggyback on the importance of that, I think touch on so many good things there, but the attribution piece of that is the other thing, right? So attribution, because you can, to Eric's point, I could generate 1,000 trials tomorrow, right? I can go on Twitter and launch some sort of campaign, get them in for $4 a piece, right? But the quality of that, what is it? And if you're only looking at the total number of trials as the metric, a lot of the details get lost. And from a marketing spend standpoint and efficiency, if you're tracking it all the way to paying customer, now it's okay, yeah, I generate a lot on Facebook or Twitter, but actually the high quality ones that are converting are coming from our paid search and LinkedIn campaigns. So that's where we're going to double down, right? And we're going to actually pull the spend out of these other channels and put it there. So I think the attribution ties all that together. So I know a lot of times companies are oh, we'll worry about that later, and figuring out where credit goes kind of thing. And it's well, no, you don't realize how much wasted spend. It's not necessarily about credit. It's about gaining the efficiency.
Got it. So it sounds like we have some consensus. Quality of the leads being generated, more of a priority than just sheer volume alone. And probably in addition to that, important that internally the things that you're measuring for are level of quality, and then making choices to allocate resources accordingly. Eric, it looked like you might have had another comment.
No, I think that's, I agree 100%. And so it's measuring that quality through attribution is important for marketing investments, certainly, as you continue to kind of hone where you're investing dollars and time and energy. But again, just to hammer home the point, I think if you have the opportunity as a marketing team to start focusing on count and value of pipeline that you've contributed, do that as soon as possible, because whether or not you've got all the attribution set up, that's going to tell you that's going to be the best measure generally of how effective your marketing team is. And then tying, being able to attribute channels back to that, that's going to help you with marketing investments for sure. I think just first and foremost, if you can get focused on pipeline now, it's a great place to be.
So we will be editing the title of this webinar in our remarketing campaign to 10x multiplier on the quality of your lead generation.
Yeah,
I think that's where our conversation will go for the rest of the session. Okay, so let's go back to the audience poll. It looks like we have a clear winner in terms of popularity and the strategies listed. And I owe an apology to our speakers, Eric and Adam, because I did not include this strategy on the pre-approved list that we had going internally before this webinar. So let's see if Adam and Eric can be nimble on their feet. But strategy is the last one on the list: maintaining thought leadership in a blog and using omni-channel publications. So pushing that out to Medium, LinkedIn, other channels. Obviously this is a big bucket. So Adam, we'll start with you. I'm sure most companies out there are maintaining a blog. But in terms of lead generation, similar to the last strategy, maybe one or two tactical best practices to keep in mind as you're keeping your blog going and trying to optimize for lead gen. Yeah.
So I don't think you should actually optimize your blog or content strategy for lead gen necessarily. I think you should optimize it to add value, right? And so it's whoever that persona is that you're going after. It's what do they actually care about, and how do we create content that would be valuable to them? Because it's very easy to see how thinly veiled some of the content is when it's just a product push or trying to get people into a free trial and stuff like that. I think if you add more value in your content, and that's your pure goal, and you can put in different metrics and stuff like that of how you want to track it, the brand equity you build up through there kind of lends itself, I think, to trusting the company more, wanting to do more trials, and you kind of see the organic stuff sort of rise. I think the other thing to point out when we think of like thought leadership and content and those sorts of things is like, especially on social channels, nobody wants to hear from a company, right? Like nobody cares about a specific company. They care about the individuals, right? So I don't want to follow Appcues and see their content. I want to follow Eric and see his content, right? Because like it feels more authentic to me. So I think understanding that and the way LinkedIn works, like you're going to get a much broader reach if you set people on your team up to be those thought leaders. And so if you go after customer support people, who on your customer support team could you build up from a marketing standpoint to actually be that thought leader out there?
That's a great point. And if I think of some of the blog content that I personally really like, it usually in my mind I'm associating it to that person who I've seen them make several posts, and it's, yep, I know Eric Poyer over in OpenView. If he posts anything, I'm reading it. Eric, anything to add for blog content?
Yeah, well, I agree with Adam. I think lead gen is your goal. You probably got it wrong. If that's your main goal anyway.
Yep.
I think what I'd add is if you are going to be investing time and energy into thought leadership and having a blog, be very mindful about who it's for. And there's so much content out there right now that I have 1,000 options in terms of what I'm going to read. So I think there are two paths into this content. One is doing a really great job with SEO. That takes a lot of time. But the other is being known for something very specific. An example that I can give that I've really come to rely on recently is this company called Plana. I actually don't know a ton about them, but I do know that they are creating strategic content for marketing leaders. And every time I read any of it, it feels very unbiased. They're not trying to sell me anything. I'm actually, I don't even remember how, but I'm now on I get their newsletter and I actually read it on a regular basis because the content is so good. And now I know, certainly if I get a better understanding of what their product does, which I'm sure I will over time. So, it's a long play, a lot of the stuff, the brand, I will definitely consider Plana a trustworthy company that I should consider when making a decision about purchasing a product that they offer.
Got it. Okay, so it seems like we incidentally laid a little bit of a trap here with this strategy. A lot of folks tuned in, clicked it as, yes, this is very important for my lead generation. According to Adam, according to Eric, not so directly related to your lead generation figures. This is more of a long-term brand building type of initiative.
Yes, but without a doubt, the fact that we've invested time and energy into our blog and thought leadership for the past 4 to 5 years is the reason why we can so successfully drive leads right now. Organic is still our top lead source. And, whenever when we ask prospects, like, what are the top reasons you're considering Appcues? Probably, I don't have the data in front of me, but one of the top reasons is because they recognized our brand and we were credible on the topic. So it definitely impacts lead gen. It's just not, if you make it your primary goal, it's probably not going to be the most successful content strategy. Yeah.
It's also not to your point, it's not like the thing that's, if you're looking to like 10x your lead gen this year, don't put your kids in that basket. If in 3 years from now, you want to say like, I want to have a steady stream of organic and branded kind of trials coming in or demo requests, like then it's the long-term play, and it allows you, when things like COVID hit and all this craziness, right? Like that you could actually pull all your ad spend and you're still getting trials coming in the door. Like we have a big amount of organic traffic that drives a pretty heavy amount of our actual trials. And it's because we've built up a content machine. Whereas like placing all your bets in Google or Facebook, the second you stop spending, the second you stop seeing results, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So let's make a return to the speaker approved strategies in our audience poll. It looks like another popular one was A/B test everything: email subject lines, landing pages, ad copy, etc. So Eric, we'll start with you. 1 to 2 best practices that come to mind when it comes to A/B testing to optimize for quality lead generation?
Yeah. So two things, I suppose. One is make sure that if you do have an attribution model in place, make sure that you can recognize the version of the test that the prospect came through, because you might see that it's really easy to optimize a test for, like, I can run a test on a landing page and say version A, version B, which one drives the most trials. But what that's not going to tell me is which one drives the most business at the end of the day. And it's all very related. So if you can make sure that the version is end to end all the way to close business, that's ideal. Specifically about approach to A/B testing, especially if you have a lower volume of, if you're an early stage startup, you're probably still building up your website traffic and your volumes overall. But test big, make very big, bold, very different tests. Even if you're working with high volumes, testing the color of a button is nice, but that's refinement, right? You're not there yet. So if you're testing a landing page, test a version, your standard version, whatever you have now, and then something completely different. Because then once you do that, you can say, okay, well, I approached version A this way. I approached version B very differently. Version B won, so now I'm going to start there and now start to refine it from that, like, broad learning at the beginning.
Got it. So quickly about the first piece, the attribution piece, because we may have some founders tuned in right now who marketing isn't their expertise per se, but they're kind of wearing that hat for the time being, or someone on the team is. When it comes to making sure that you have the attribution in place, is that something where it should be part of the product for whatever tool you're using? Or is there kind of like one great tool out there that you can use for attribution and in whatever your platforms are that you're using for your marketing activity?
Yeah, well, to be honest, like, we actually aren't super sophisticated in terms of the technology we use when it comes to A/B testing. We primarily rely on Google Optimize, which is free. But what we do is, if on version A we'll call the form one thing, and on version B we'll call it another thing, and then we can just track it back to the form that was submitted. So there are all sorts of hacky ways you can do it. You don't need some fancy technology to track it properly. Just be mindful of it.
Cool. All right, so we've got attribution, and we have, second insight was big, bold differences rather than just sort of the nitty-gritty refinement. Adam, we'll go over to you. Best practices for A/B testing.
Yeah, I think one of the big things when I think of like A/B testing and how you want to launch those campaigns is it's also like building it into a process, right? So having a backlog of things you want to test, and don't limit it to like just whoever is doing marketing, right? I think like part of the idea of like Eric had of like big ideas, I think is spot on, especially if you don't have like a lot of traffic, but like also source those ideas from other people and other things you see. So we have like an Airtable we just keep like a running log of things we want to test, right? And it could be, hey, what if we put a banner up on the homepage that said, 90 days free, or what it could be like, and it's like, we don't even offer that now, but it's like, well, maybe we should test it and see and try these things out, right? So like, I think it's just like putting those ideas on, and then I think with that too is also keeping that backlog, tracking the results, because I think a lot of times people approach A/B testing like it's a brand new thing, and it's like, oh, we're going to test this subject line or this approach to the email. Well, you already tested like a design versus plain text 3 months ago. So you already kind of have the results. So I think like, don't just lose track of all the results you're getting out of it, right? To say like, hey, for our audience, this actually performs better. We know that, we've tested it 2 times. We don't have to go back to that test, right? Like, let's test something else. So I think tracking the results too, because I think a lot of times it's just done in a silo and it's like, oh, this one. Okay, now we're going to send it out to everyone else. And then like the next time you go to do an email, it's like, hey, let's A/B test it. What should we test? And it becomes like the afterthought, like, hey, we know we should be doing this, but like, what should we actually be testing? So having that backlog, I think, helps in that. And then I think also tracking the results to say, like, what are the things we actually want to test and get more information on?
I see laughter from Eric, so I assume
Yeah,
you might have experienced something similar in the past.
yeah, just 100% on the organization piece. Running the same test multiple times makes no sense. If you stay organized, you'll be able to get around that, move faster, and learn faster. I did have one more thing came to mind while Adam was talking too. Is one hack for learning quickly, especially if you don't have a super high volume of traffic to test with. I learned this, I forget from who, earlier in my career. If you've got a message or positioning test you want to run, instead of running it on a landing page where it may take you weeks or months to get a result, one thing you can do is put a little budget aside for like some Facebook testing or some LinkedIn testing. And let's say your audience is SaaS digital marketers and mid-market and SMB. You can target those folks and test 2 ads with the different messages. You can get a lot of volume very quickly and see which one gets more clicks. It's not gonna give you perfect results, but it will help you get volume and learn pretty quickly up front which test is going to resonate with that market better.
Nice, good tactical insight. So we've got about 10, 13 minutes left. So let's try to hit a few of these other strategies. The next one that we've got, which seemed to be fairly popular, is investing in a keyword strategy to improve search ranking for your content. So similar to the strategies before it, Adam, we'll start with you. 1 to 2 tactical best practices that you would recommend for earlier stage teams here.
Yeah. So I think for like a keyword strategy, it really comes down to understanding who your buyer is, right? And like, what is it that they're actually searching for? And what is it you want to be ranking for? So I think a lot of it is just done in the prep work, I think, of like understanding. And I also think, so I think that's one is like really identifying like who's the target audience you're going after. But then I think the other thing is, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? It's very easy to go out and see like, what are all the keywords your biggest competitor, the company that you think is most similar to you, are actually already targeting? They've probably already done the work for you, right? So it's very easy using Ahrefs and all these other tools out there to just go out and find what people are trying to rank for and what they're writing for. So I think like from a keyword strategy, like if you have a lean team and you're trying to figure it out quickly, I think there's some easy ways to go about doing it by just looking at what other people are doing.
Got it. Not necessary to reinvent the wheel completely.
Yeah, because it's all got to tie back to search volume. I think a big problem you see a lot of times is like people are like, oh, here's what we want to rank for. Here's how we position our products. Like, yeah, but nobody's actually searches for that, right? Like, and so I think like looking at the volume to say like, well, what are they searching for? And then also I think breaking out your keywords to say like, what is top of the funnel type searches that happen down to bottom of the funnel, right? So the example would be like, what is a CRM is very top of the funnel versus like, what is the best CRM for enterprise companies? That's way bottom of the funnel, right? And so I think optimizing some of your content for where they are in the funnel too.
That's an interesting insight. Eric, any color to add?
Yeah, if you are trying to discover new keywords that maybe aren't very prominent in your industry, or just trying to even validate the ones you've decided on, one of the things you can do is look through if you're recording your sales calls or having them transcribed. A lot of our sales reps are asking like, so how'd you hear about Appcues, or what were you looking for? And then we also, even in the support queue, when customers have questions, oftentimes they're very tactical and specific to our product, but sometimes they'll ask questions like, can I do this or that? So if you can look at some of that information, that's firsthand from the prospects or from the customers what they were looking for, what they're interested in. So that's if you do have the ability to do that, I'd encourage you to. It's a great source of new keywords.
Also good. Let's move on to those are some great tactics for that category. Let's anything else? Sorry, Adam or Eric, to mention that. Those were four like gold stars for that category. Anything else you want to mention in that category? Because I'm just sensing that there may be some others that are worth mentioning. If not, we move on to the next one.
Another thing you could do is when you're writing a blog post on a certain topic, oftentimes you might want to approach it as like, it's going to be very specific about this longer tail. We have so much content on user onboarding, but we have certain blog posts that are like 5 best practices for user onboarding, or user onboarding in X industry. That's all great blog content, but also in addition to that, we've had a lot of success at Appcues as well as at past companies that I've been at, creating basically SEO landing pages for the kind of umbrella concept. So 3,000 words plus, super rich with multimedia. Appcues.com/user onboarding is just this super rich resource that Google loves that. Not all the time. You got to do it right. There are a lot of little tricks to making it work, but if you can have that and then kind of link all of your longer tail content related to user onboarding back to that, and kind of create a little bit of a hub and spoke content model. I've had a lot of success with that in the past.
Good. Awesome. Adam, any others you want to throw in?
Yeah, I think the other like SEO one, I think is everyone thinks of their own site. And the reality is like a lot of search happens outside of that, right? And so I think, and a lot of like discovery happens off of your own site. So to channel my past life at G2, right? Like if you search like Appcues competitor, probably what would show up would be like a site like G2, where it's got all these presence of here's their reviews, here's your other competitors' reviews. So I think when you think of like people doing search and capturing some of that traffic, like don't ignore the fact that you should be driving reviews on some of these sites and have a presence there. The worst thing you could do is have like a blank profile on any of the review sites, G2, Trust Radius, whatever fits your business. And because you're losing out on a lot of traffic and a lot of presence that you could actually get through those sites.
Awesome. We got 2 bonus tactics there into that category. So we have a question in from the audience. The question is from Soya. If you are forced to cut down on marketing budget, what areas have you optimized on, and can you talk about ROI? For example, retention, cross-channel campaigns for qualified leads, double down ICPs, personalized content for ICPs, conversational intelligence to optimize like Gong, Drift, etc. Long question there. Adam or Eric, for either of you, thoughts for that question.
I'm happy to start, Adam. We did right at the beginning of COVID kind of scale back our marketing spend just out of just being hyper conservative about not knowing what was coming up. So we did have to make some of these decisions. And what we focused on is we have such a high volume of traffic coming from organic. We were spending a lot on paid search and other types of programs to bring net new traffic to our site. But what we ended up spending, really not touching in terms of investment, are retargeting programs, actually. We've got people to the site in a low cost way through our content. Now let's nurture those folks and let's make the most out of the people that we got to our site. When it came to making changes to our retargeting program, we tightened up some of the retargeting criteria. We segmented it a bit more. So, we changed the retargeting criteria to only be targeting people who spent more than, I can't remember what it is now, but maybe even more than 30 seconds on our site. So we weren't just getting the people who like came and bounced because they're not as valuable to us. We also started, retargeting blog traffic differently than folks who made it to like our marketing site where we talked about the product, differently than those who made it into our trial or viewed our pricing page, because you might want some different messaging to those. But the whole idea is, when to tie it back to something I said earlier, and Adam said as well, is about efficiency. You've got these people to your site, assuming they're good fits. Let's capitalize on that. Let's spend our time and attention there. The other big shift that our team made is much more of an explicit focus on customer engagement and retention. So one of the things we started doing right out of the gate is we did an audit of our customer nurture programs and our customer communications, which we hadn't put a lot of emphasis on in my time, and found a lot of low-hanging fruit, a lot of areas where we could improve the communications that we were sending. We have this weekly email that goes out to show like a snapshot of their performance. There's a lot of real estate there in which we could use to drive more content consumption, showcase best practices and case studies, give people reasons to log back into the product. So that's another big, I wouldn't say shift, but like new or increased focus for the marketing team.
So on the one hand, we have lead nurturing. On the other, kind of putting a little more care into current customers and kind of product marketing, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Folks. Awesome. Adam, have you ever found yourself in a situation where budgets might be coming down a bit and you're refocusing on certain efforts?
Yeah, I think every marketer has been in that situation. I think specifically it happened on my first day where it's like, hey, we're cutting your marketing budget. And I think to Eric's point, like we did very similar. I think we immediately went to where are we spending the most money and like what efficiencies can we gain. So we pulled back pretty heavily on our paid search budget as well. Similar reasons. We have a lot of organic traffic coming through. We were actually spending a decent amount of money on branded terms too, which we pulled that spend and we're still capturing about 80% of that now anyways. And it was more of just like a protect this house kind of mentality of like, hey, we don't want competitors advertising on it and us losing some of those things. And that wasn't really worth it for us. We've also just tightened up a lot of our targeting, right? Whereas like we were bidding on terms that were more, we weren't geo-fencing it to say like US only or North America only, but when we started looking through the conversion rates of some of the things we were seeing all the way through paying customer, we were able to like really tighten up our targeting. And so the other things we're kind of doubling down on, we are a similar thing, relaunching, kind of retargeting and getting that back out the door of things we want to be doing and honing that in. And then I think for us is like we have a database of, several 100,000 people. And it's like, not just like nurturers, but like, what are we doing to engage with that audience, right? Like at some point in time, they had interest, whether they started a free trial a year ago, assuming they still have that need somewhere along the line, they're either using a competitor or not, right? And so I think trying to hone in on like our targeting and who we're going after very specifically. So for things like that, we're looking at like tech stack of those people, like what solution do they have now? Do we have a good, interesting message to go out after, who they're using today to try to get like a steal campaign kind of going. And so just thinking of like all the different ways we could start re-engaging those folks.
Got it. So our fifth and final strategy here on the poll was retarget paid ad campaigns to a pre-qualified set. So it sounds like we actually wound up covering that incidentally. So we're coming up on 12:45. It's 12:44 now. So I think that about wraps up the conversation. Eric, Adam, thank you both so much. Maybe let's do like a kind of like a one word or a one phrase takeaway for you both. If you have to leave everyone who's tuned in with one seed of wisdom when it comes to lead generation, Eric, we'll start with you and then we'll go to Adam and we'll tune out after that.
Okay. I'll just qualify this a little bit by this is always important, but especially important right now, given the environment we're all in. And don't want you to forget about brand building and all of that. Sometimes seems like it's counter to what I'm about to say, but right now efficiency is what it's all about. If you can measure, you get the proper attribution set up and really doing more with what you've already achieved in terms of capturing interest, that's what it's all about right now. So efficiency.
Efficiency is very important right now. Adam, final takeaway from you.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little different direction of something we didn't talk about at all today. And that's like partnerships. I think like one of it is like marketers today are doing everything they can to try to grow, right? And everyone's in a tough spot with reduced budgets. And so I think like the more I think of things like this, right, and getting people together to do webinars or co-branded ebooks, like most marketers are game for doing that sort of things, right? So I think like don't lose sight of the fact like you can start leveraging other companies that are playing in a similar space that have maybe bigger audiences. If you can do a lot of the heavy lifting from a content side, most of them will want to partner with you, right? So I think like those are some of the areas of opportunity.
I think we just uncovered our lead generation 2.0 follow-up webinar, which will be partnerships focused, because I'm sure we can dive into that one too. Awesome. Okay, well, it's 12:45. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Adam, for all those tuned in. I think we got definitely got high density of tactics that no shortage of things we can start kind of implementing on tomorrow to see some good results. So thanks everyone tuning in. Thank you again, Adam and Eric, and hope to see you all on another webinar soon.
Awesome.
Thanks everybody. Thanks Ross. See ya.